Okay, we're going to get started. If you'd like to take a seat back in the back there, guys in the back, want to take a seat? It'll just make me feel better if you're sitting. Okay, did you guys miss us?
Yes.
Didn't get to see you last month. We have some stuff to talk about, not a whole lot, but what we have is important, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Are there any elected officials in the room or representatives that would like to be noticed?
Hi, my name is Renee Matisse, and my husband is State Representative Mark Matisse for this district, and he is away at a conference, so I am here for him, okay? Thank you.
Amy Felker, I'm an alderwoman for the city of St. Anne, and Doug, I want to congratulate you on winning your
I'm Bill Crowley, alderman in St. Anne.
Randy Hine, Councilman Ward 3 in Bridgeton.
Linda Henry, I'm here for Steve Stanger, County Executive.
I would like to, well, I guess we would, so we're a team, would like to congratulate Doug Clements and Court. Hi, just saw you sneak in back there.
Hi guys.
So,
Hi, I'm Court Van Oster. I'm running for Congress against Ann Wagner in the 2nd district.
anybody else? Any, oh, over here.
Hi, I'm Paula Brown, candidate for District 70 House of the State of Representatives.
Hi, Paula. Okay. That it? Anybody else? All right, well then we're going to get started. We do not have an opening prayer because there's no one here unless someone wants to volunteer to lead us in prayer. So Dawn said we're going to start with the truth. And the truth is that we have been busy, and so we're going to share that with you guys here in just a minute. What is this, Debbie?
It's his book. He's still selling.
Oh, so Pastor John here wrote his book. I don't know, some of you have purchased it. We have, it's excellent. If you would like to purchase it, you can get in touch with him. And $1 from each sale goes to Just Moms STL. Do we have any new people here tonight? Hi. Okay, then most of you probably know that we have our Facebook page, West Lake Landfill, the STL Going Strong, the Just Moms STL, and our website, Just Moms STL. We have a disclaimer next.
Yeah.
What's this?
It's Kristen's page.
Oh, the Humans of. Kristen Camuso, I think I saw you. Kristen Camuso is the founder of the Humans of Westlake page. She takes photos to tell our stories, to be shared by photographs. If you'd like to have your photograph done to share your story, you can get in contact with her on her Humans of Westlake page. Are we still smelling the odor? Odor? Okay, so everybody in here probably knows to report the odor. Please continue to do that. We have a site where you can go to order our t-shirts like this one. Franciscan Sisters of Mary are still holding their prayer vigils. The next one is August 22nd.
September 12th and 26th.
Huh?
September 12th and the 26th.
September 12th and September 26th. The second and fourth Wednesday of every month. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody saw this. It's kind of going around on Facebook. There's going to be a presentation, I guess, building on our commitment to North County, and this is through the Siteman Cancer Center. As all of you know, we're a very sick community. This is going to be Monday. It's going to be a community town hall Monday, August 27th at the St. Charles Rock Road Library at 9:30. So in case you're interested in that, it'll be on our website and on our Facebook page if you need more information.
And I'm Hazelwood the next day.
And then there will be another one in Hazelwood. I think they're having a few of them around
And
town.
I think they want your input too.
Right.
It's our understanding they want to hear from the community, hear about the illnesses, hear about ways that you guys and suggestions you might have that site and can meet the needs of the community.
Are they gonna schedule any Saturdays? There's a lot of people who can make it Monday.
Yeah, that's a good
Did you
point.
see any Saturdays on there, Kristen?
I don't know, it's like, how long is it?
Okay.
No, but we can reach out to them and ask.
Yeah,
That would be a good idea. Yeah, or evening.
right. Yeah.
the next Hazelwood one is an evening, it's like a 5:30.
The Hazelwood one is an evening?
I think so, but I think
Okay.
it's still kind of early for a lot of them.
A lot of people.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I don't know how to say this word.
She done medical,
Medical something for natural healing.
Harvey's working on that with Pastor John. If you guys want to participate, he has flyers. Raise your hand, Harvey. Please feel free to see him after this event.
It's going to be held here, so if you want more information on that, we'll have it on our website, or you can see Harvey, like Don said, he has the information too. Our next West Lake Landfill community meeting
Is
is
September.
supposed to be in September. Is that the 20th, Debbie?
September 20th, yeah.
We're going to tell you right now that it will depend on if the decision has come out. If it has in that time frame, then we'll keep that meeting. If not, we will call an emergency meeting so that we can get together and talk about the decision that's being announced. It's supposed to be by the end of September. They are pretty adamant that it's going to be no sooner than September 30th, so.
Which really kind of means by the week after.
We don't have any, other than you. I don't want to exclude you. Are you aware of how we got to where we are? Has Alex filled you in with what's going on?
Okay.
Good job. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Don.
Okay, so we didn't have anybody to open with prayer tonight, so I wanted to read something to you guys from 1999. If you'll bear with me, because later, after we go through the updates, and then as the Community Foundation comes up and we introduce them, we're going to be talking about ways that this community has been impacted by this site. And I want you guys to hear this, because this, I think, this is information on on a site of West Lake Landfill that has the hottest waste. It's information on an area that waste leaked onto. This is from 1999, and this is the owner of the property and a dialogue between them and EPA. So it's going to make you furious, but I think if you want to know why Karen and I give up the first day of school to be here, this is one of the reasons, because we truly believe that this community has been harmed. And I think you can hear the warning in this. On November 18th, 1999, Hearst & Associates, that is a science firm who works for the landfill. Do you have a picture up, Debbie, that you can put up of the landfill real quick? Because I want to show you where it is. Okay, this is known as the Ford property. Can you outline it right there? Okay, that's the Ford property.
Oh, sorry.
Go back. How do I work that pointer, Deb?
Should press the middle button.
Middle button. Okay. This whole area, along with this, is West Lake Landfill. Those of you over here. Over here, this is called Area 2. This is where some of the hottest waste sits on the surface. Has for over 45 years, since this waste was dumped in 1973.
Where's St. Charles Rock Road from there?
The Rock Road is right here. Hussman, right over here.
Can you show
Verbeck.
over here too, please?
Yes. St. Charles Rock Road, that's the Rock Road right there.
What else? Canal drains from the river.
That is a large body of water that goes directly into the Missouri River that has not been ever tested. That sits right directly next to the hottest area on the landfill. This is hot up here too. Let's get that straight. It's all radioactive. It's all hot. But this area has some 2 million counts per minute on a Geiger counter. It's screaming hot. And it leaked onto this property. And then, yeah, this is the AAA trailer lot. And then what happened was the owners of AAA trailer, and you can hear when I read this, were pretty pissed off that they didn't have full use of their property. So there were radiation signs down here, no fence. So they hired an outside contractor to come in and take a bulldozer and a grader and push radioactive dirt right up here. Just messed with it. Messed with the Superfund site. Hired a company. No protective gear, didn't alert EPA. I want to read this to you. On November 18th, 1999, Hearst and Associates, the bad guy scientists, performed a site walkover of the Ford, that's the Ford, and crossover properties, and observed that the upper 2 to 6 inches of soil material had been scraped from the Ford buffer and the lot and pushed up against the boundary fence separating the property from West Lake Landfill. An amount of scraped material was also mounded along the northern portion of the Ford property. Approximately 10 to 12 inches of gravel had then been placed over the eastern portion of the property, while the remaining disturbed soils were left exposed. The dates during which the excavation occurred are unknown. The excavation was performed despite signage warning of the presence of radioactive contamination. Numerous sets of tire tracks were also observed on the excavated property, including tracks indicating that vehicles have been driven directly past a radioactive contamination warning sign. It was noted by Hearst and Associates that the excavation process has, in quotes, increased the potential for wind-blown particles to exit the property. And the mounded material is, in quotes, subject to erosion potential due to runoff from precipitation. That's in 1999. Continue. EPA was notified November 24th, 1999, via telephone conversation between Michael Hawley on behalf of the bad guys and David Hofer of EPA, that an unknown party had initiated clearing and grubbing activities on property adjacent to the West Lake Landfill. They were served a written notification of this discovery December 2nd, 1999. Here it is. You ready? This is the bad guys. This is the bad guys saying this. Based on the potential for wind or precipitation runoff-induced erosion and transport of these soils, the respondents, the bad guys, through this work plan I have in my hand here, are proposing to conduct, subject to EPA approval, a time-critical removal action to retrieve and relocate the soil piles to prevent potential off-site transport. 1999, guess what? It's still sitting there. That's what a time-critical, it's still sitting there. And here are the bad guys warning that just to allow it to sit there creates the potential for it to get off-site, windblown. That's 19 years ago. 19 years ago. So you guys can come look at this if you want. I'm going to lay it over here. But that's why we're here tonight, because something horrible has happened at this landfill. It was horrible that it was dumped 45 years ago. But it's even worse that it's been allowed to sit there. And to make matters worse, we've had an EPA all these years that has said, it's not a big deal, nothing's going on. Well, gee, we don't think it's in people's homes. How could it not be? How could it not be? You have the bad guys in a document asking EPA to let them clean it up because they're afraid that's what's going to happen. EPA never gave approval. That's right, isn't it, Martin?
That's correct.
EPA never gave approval for that removal action. And so this community has been growing. Kids have been riding the bus. Workers work at Hussman. Canals have stayed there all those years, 19 years. So when you hear people say that they're finding radioactive waste in people's homes, that's how it got there. Just saying. And that is one mistake. That is one mistake on a piece of paper. We've got proof of many. So this decision coming up at the end of September, the whole purpose of this is to try and get this site in some sort of stable condition, some sort of decision that will prevent what the warning was here from happening again in the future. Okay, that's what we're up against. And capping it and leaving it there isn't going to do that, just so you know. It's going to require some type of removal, and this community, if we don't get that, this is what you face. And that's just a little berm. That's just a little area, guys, right here that that warning was for. Don't forget this little area right here that crazy warning was for. So imagine this whole area here and this whole area here was surface level radioactive waste. What do you think the warning for that is? And you've got Kalmeyer Creek. We have work to do. We have a lot of work to do in this community, and we've been through a lot. And then we have a fire on top of it, so.
So I think you probably all know that Albert Kelly has left, and he has been replaced by a gentleman named Stephen Cook. He did want to get here and meet with some of the leaders and stakeholders throughout the community a week ago or two. Dawn and I did sit down with Representative Mark Mathieson, and basically, and Congresswoman Ann Wagner was there, basically kind of pushed to see if we could get this decision released as early as possible, and they're pretty committed to sticking to September 30th. You know, he's aware of the opposition, of the paid-for opposition. We were trying to discuss with him, wanting to find out if EPA could tell the difference between all the public comments that were made, if they were public comments from our community here or outside. They really have no way of knowing that, so that wasn't the greatest of news. But other than that, it was just basically a commitment from EPA saying that they are still going to get this decision out at the end of September. They are committed to that. The new administrator has been brought up to speed with Westlake. He's very aware of what's going on. They've had several conversations with him. That's Administrator Wheeler. So I don't know if there's much more to do. Ed?
I have a question or say something.
I'll just say something. At Missouri, I work for the Missouri Coalition for the Environment, and we had a meeting following the moms and the elected officials. And EPA Region 7 Administrator Jim Belford was in those meetings as well. And not only did they assure us that the final decision would come out by the end of September, the Region 7, once the new administrator was appointed, requested that each region send in their top priorities, like what are the top 2 or 3 issues in your region. And for Region 7, Westlake was the #1 issue that they sent to the new administrator. That is, taking up a lot of their time and attention. So.
Right. Thanks, Ed, for adding that. Harvey?
Yeah, I'm Mark Burton. I'm chair of the Community Advisory Group from TAG. So TAG also met with Stephen Cook and Jim Belford. And one of the things that we emphasize in addition to asking for relocation for folks nearby is that they do some testing to know recording in time to inform how they're going to do this work. saw in the fire has still not been tested for radioactivity to this day. So we're still pushing very hard that they need to do, at least do some sampling there to get an idea of just what's really there.
I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Harvey. Sorry.
I just wanted to add that it's worth noting that in these meetings, the EPA is deeply limited as to what they will respond to because they're deciding on solutions that can't discuss any testing directly, they can't discuss any actions directly. And so it's a lot of us talking to them and heads on it.
They had quite a bit to say, but that might have been because we had a federal congresswoman.
She was,
weren't prepared for
she was pretty point blank and they were pretty,
And I do think it's important to note that on her behalf and on the reps' behalf and on all the reps, so Rep Clay, Claire McCaskill, Senator McCaskill, everybody truly appears to be pushing in the direction of the proposal isn't enough, we need more. I mean, and it's helpful, I think, for us when you're sitting here to be able to hear what they're saying because we don't always know. We all probably can guess there's lots of phone calls that go back and forth in DC that we're not privy to. So it's always helpful to see. The other thing that we have to do and that we are asking for is that there be real-time air monitoring installed at the site before they open the ground up. They need to get a baseline. They need to have an idea of what's going on in the air before they start construction. And we want that to be real time. None of this, we got to wait 2 months for results. Crap. Because that's not helpful at all. So, Todd and then Alex.
I know at one time we discussed 7 different options with the removal. And I guess I'm kind of thinking what Doug said. I guess it's still real hush-hush. I mean, are they still leaning towards a particular solution?
It
Or
sounds,
is it just hush-hush?
no, from what we got, it sounds as though they're doing a mixture. So it sounds as though they have proposals, and it sounds like they're pulling, but it's hush-hush as far as what direction. I mean, and even the Congresswoman asked, and we can't talk about that. But in terms of getting a better proposal, that's been laid out hands down. So I do think, let's put it this way, I don't know what they're going to do, but I mean, they're going to be in a world of hurt, I can only think, if they don't do more than they proposed. Let's just put it that way, because they can do more than what was proposed. So that's kind of the message that we heard behind the scenes and that we're hearing from all the offices. So we're all going to have to wait. Yep.
If they decide to store on site, they're going to have whole community up in arms.
Right. Donna said if they decide to store it on site. By the way, it's not just the options that Todd mentioned, it's where to put the waste. You know, all the radioactive waste in St. Louis being dug up out of backyards now from Coldwater Creek to downtown Malincrot is going somewhere. But for whatever reason, Republic has started a campaign that nobody wants the waste from West Lake. Even though it's the same, it's just a lobbyist, it's just a way to minimize what they have to pay at the site. But the on-site disposal is a real possibility. It was one of the things that I think caught us off guard because they asked us specifically to comment on it. So I don't think they would have done that unless they were actually considering that. And the overwhelming input they've received has said, no, don't do that. But Alex and then Carlton.
I was just wondering if there was any insight with the new administrator on what role that he'll play in the decision, with how Pruitt was like, I'm going to play an active role and kind of all of that, which wasn't necessarily normal before.
Status quo. Alex asked if with the new EPA administrator, if he's planning, if the actual administrator is planning on playing an active role. It's status quo. Status quo.
We've been told that that would not change.
And we'll see. We'll believe it when we see it, but that's what we've been told.
Are we going to be able to get air monitoring independent of your public services numbers?
We don't know.
We couldn't hear that.
Helen wants to know if we're going to be able to get air monitoring independent of our public services and the bad guys. So monitors that are not controlled by those who made the mess. It's certainly our push. We're going to try.
That's something you're trying to
That, yeah, I mean, the request has been made of EPA by many different people. So, we'll see where that lands. But in my opinion, it's a definite, it must happen, so. Moving on real quick. Oh, sorry, Carlton.
My question actually was probably answered. Carlton Stock, Ferguson Eco Team, and I was wondering about the new administrator also. Status quo, you're saying, I mean, does he have the same commitment that Pruitt did, you think? I mean, as far as you know.
So, yes, they say he does. The issue is, nobody really knew what Pruitt's commitment was. So, you know, we know what they say it is. This will be, other than a site in Texas, which already had a decision that just needed to be signed, this will be the first major cleanup decision that this administration carries down. So a lot will go, you know, everybody is kind of waiting, not just us, but other sites. This is going to set the precedent for how they handle these sites. So, I mean, we're not going to know until September 30th, and they won't even tell us, just so you know, they won't even tell us how they're going to alert us. We don't even know if it's going to be a late night email like it was. We don't know, and they're not even going there.
And it probably goes, if I could just follow up on a second, probably goes without saying that this administration now, here they come in, so not have a good record on taking care of the environment. I mean, that's what our group is about. And we've seen nothing but bad news. Bad news. Once in a while there'll be something that happens. I'm sorry to get into politics, but this is above politics. This is like people's lives. This is a lot more just conservative and liberal stuff. This is taking care of our country, our people, our health. So anyhow.
We're aware of that. There is a track record. I'll be honest with you, it's hard not to look at that track record. We're human, like you guys are. We read the articles. We stay up. We're up very late. Some of us early. I don't do early. She does early. We do really, really late, but I guess sometimes it's early. It depends on how late. But I mean, yeah, we lay awake at night. We read the same things you guys do. We look at the same sites. It's hard not to be discouraged, and I think a little bit of that is faith. We're going to have a little bit of faith that this community has really come a long way and made its voice heard enough to get a good solution at this site. Now, that being said, this community did a lot to get its voice heard, but guys, you're going to have to do even more to keep it, because the last thing you want is a decision at this site that turns out to be a good one, and for everybody to disperse and say, oh, they got it from here.
Has to be followed.
Right. You have to follow it through. We plan on continuing these meetings and talking about the planning and following it all the way through the cleanup. So.
Yeah, I was just going to mention for folks concerned about the politics of this is that, you know, since the beginning, Pruitt, regardless of his other policies, has said that Superfund was a core mission of the EPA. Asked that same question to the new people. They said that they, you know, are following that guidance, if you will. They know that they still believe that Superfund is a core mission of the EPA. And if we are under the impression that there might be a good remedy here where removal is involved, I don't think that they would be able to change it so quickly between the decision-making process once it's been going because of the new arrivals leading the EPA. I think that you would have a massive delay in the release of the proposal if they were to change course.
And if we're talking politics, which we are, and we're just going to be honest, you don't get something for nothing. Obviously, they want something out of this. If they come down with a good decision, they want a cheer and a hurrah, and they want notice for the fact that the previous administration didn't. And I really don't care. I guess you don't either. I don't care, Democrat, Republican. I don't care who cleans this site up, as long as it gets cleaned up and our community gets put back the way it needs to be. That's just a fact. So, You know, that's why, that's our push, is we'll work with anybody that sits in a seat that has the power to fix and save our kids. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you said about scattering after the decision is made. I drive by the airport every day, and that's been over 20 years. I don't know what their schedule was. The proposed record decision was like a 5-year plan. But if you don't stick with it, it's going to be an infinite plan. It's going to be just, I mean, they're over there hauling dirt. Sometimes the guys wear, you know, the moon suits, and sometimes they're not
That
wearing anything.
is definitely something that needs to be watched on, that is not happening.
It seems like that's never going to be finished.
And it's frustrating for us too. I mean, don't think we wouldn't like to just hop over there and start screaming and hollering about what they're doing over there. You know, because that means, you're right, that's not being followed the way it should.
So the risk is everybody dispersed, hey, we got a record decision.
And it happened at Rocky Flats. And now they want to build a path across it with surface level plutonium that's never been cleaned up. So, I mean, these things are real issues. We're aware of that, and that is why I think we've been fortunate enough. We have a really good connection with some of these other people from Superfund sites. We learn from each other. You know what I'm saying? What are they doing at your site? What did they do wrong? Superfund sites that are in all different processes of being cleaned. Some that are, like Rocky Flats, trying to figure out how to put a really pretty color lipstick on it.
Or Minden, who can't get
Yeah, or
national
Minden.
priorities list.
Minden, who can't get on the national priorities list. Yeah, Alex?
A lot of the reason cold water keeps taking longer is because they keep finding more. I know Harvey mentioned trying to get that included. So that's not already included in the record decision to test as they go. They're only going to clean up based on the data they have, or?
I don't know with cold water if they're extending the boundaries or not, or if that's within the boundaries of the Superfund site, but it was just an area that they didn't think they needed to test. Remember, like Harvey just said, testing at West Lake, it's a flaw in Superfund, which is the whole darn site can be a Superfund site, but for whatever reason, there are places they haven't tested at West Lake for radioactive waste. I would assume it's the same way for Coldwater Creek, that the total Superfund coverage area covers a larger portion, but if they're not made to test in those locations, they're not going to do it.
So for West Lake, they're going to clean up as of now, just based on previous data? They're not gonna-
No, so our understanding is, because you have OU3, which is the groundwater happening too, which is soil. Whatever decision is made in September, at the end of September, that will cover whatever new areas they will find, new soil, areas of soil testing and whatnot, that will occur under OU3. The question is when will that begin? What Harvey's working on, and we're trying to push as well, is to get that to happen in the time between a decision is made and it's implemented. That there'll be a year or so, maybe 2, as they're planning on how to clean up the site. That would be a great time for them to get these tests done, so that if they find other areas, they just lump it in with this decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of going to be the push, and it's going to be very watch and see. It's going to be stressful.
There will be more testing unrelated to OU3 if the decision's removed.
Right. There'll have to be. There will have to be, and they know that, and so that's, you know, that's why, again, I have to repeat it. Plan on showing up even after the decision, because these are conversations that we're going to have to continue to have. It might take a day of making phone calls to Congress. We can do that. We've done it before. You know, we all go order pizza, show up at somebody's house, get our cell phones out, and bombard an office. Why not? So, moving on real quick, speaking of EPA, if you go on their website and you go to get any of the materials, they're down. They're gone. Because they're combining them into a legal record, okay? They will be back up after the decision. We'll be able, and if there is something you want in the meantime, you can reach out to Ben Washburn. His email's here, but we also have it on our website. You can email him personally, and he will get you the document you're looking for. Okay, but just so you know, they didn't just erase them and take them down. They did it for a reason. A good one. That means we're close. Do you want to talk about the settlement? You want me to? Okay. So, you guys know the fire started in 2010, right? Early 2013, then Attorney General Chris Koster filed suit on behalf of the state of Missouri against Republic for violating the state's natural resources. Okay, this is a really important part. He did not file suit on behalf of you and I and the impact this site is having on us. It was solely based on the site's impact to the groundwater, the air, the environmental, okay? And that's really important. It was just settled through Attorney General Josh Hawley. It's very important that you guys know, we had a great relationship with Chris Koster's office, and we can't thank them enough and their attorneys enough. And we're fortunate enough to be able to carry that over through Josh Hawley's office as well. Where we ended up, I'm going to say is nothing less than a miracle. I'm just going to say that's the fact. Because where we ended up in this settlement is so much better than we were told with Chris Koster's office was even possible. That's right, isn't it, Matt? I mean, it's a fact. So this is a consent decree. So this is not over. It is an ongoing thing. The fire will continue to burn, probably for another 5 to even 10 years. There may be additional things that have to happen at this site. That can still happen. This is just a step in the direction in locking Republic in as a corporation. Before, the suit said the state versus Bridgeton Landfill, LLC. That's a limited liability company. Bridgeton could have just walked. In this settlement, they actually got Republic, the parent company, to sign on with their subsidiaries. So they are locked in this site forever, meaning anything on the fire side. Not with the radiation. This has nothing to do with the radiation, although we look at this as one whole site. This is just on the area of the fire. There's a lot of things in this litigation that they have to do to keep the site up to date, with water, with leachate, with emissions. We did lose air monitoring. That is a big thing we lost, which is why we're pushing for the real-time air monitors. We'll continue to push for that. How about the judge? So Matt, Karen, and I showed up to that last day of trial, as did the Community Foundation. And we were pretty surprised when they came out and the judge asked to meet with Matt, Karen, and I. So we went behind the scenes, and I think the most important thing that you need to know is that regardless of whether you look around and you say, oh, it must not be too bad, my city council people aren't worried, that's bullcrap, you guys. The judge and everybody that knows this case inside and out are worried about you. They are worried about the impact to the community. They are worried, and they want you to know, the big thing the judge wanted us to know is that this site is not suddenly better because there is this judgment and there's been a settlement. The site is still a mess. And he was very worried that the public would perceive the settlement as, oh, we're done. Everything must be under control with the fire. It's okay. That couldn't be further from the case. And that's why it was all the more important, he felt, to lock them down as the parent company, because this site is so unstable and out of control. And there are things that are probably going to have to happen at this site that nobody can even guess what they are. And they're going to cost a lot of money. So with that, and with the guarantee that whatever happens, they're on the hook for it, not us, not the city of Bridgeton, not the fire department, nobody, came a community benefit fund. So Republic racked up a lot of violations, a lot of money for violations, in the upwards of, I think, 60 million, like way up there. But if Republic, if in this agreement Republic would have just paid violations, it would have gone into the general revenue of the state. And this, that's right. We would never, as a community, and when I say as a community, it's it's legally a 4-mile radius around this site that has been deemed affected in this. We never would have seen it. So they did what was called a community benefit fund. And I will let the Community Foundation in a minute talk more about that. But that fund has been set aside and been given basically to the community foundation to make sure and trust that it gets back to this community in a way that this community, to make up for ways that this community has been harmed. And those that have been impacted. This cannot be used for a buyout, and that's a legal issue. Cannot legally be used for that, or individuals. That's it, because that's not what was written into the lawsuit. So, we still have a lot of work to do. I know Matt still keeps an eye on the fire. Nothing has changed, except they're now on the hook for everything that needs to happen. And we lost air monitors, and we have to figure out a way to get those. So, with that, I want to introduce the Community Foundation, Elizabeth George and Maria Bradford.
Well, thanks for having us here today. We are, this is actually our second meeting for Just Moms. We were here in June, just sort of sitting in the back and trying to be small. And listening to Ryan Bangert from the AG's office when he was talking about the settlement right before it happened. So you got a little bit of an introduction from him about the kinds of things that they then asked us through the settlement to do at the Community Foundation. We were not party to the lawsuit. We were not involved in that in any way. We were just the entity that the Attorney General's office said, we trust the St. Louis Community Foundation to be an organization that knows how to make grants into the community and knows how to relate in the community, and we would like them to be the holders of this money as a neutral third party to be able to help make this process so that grants can be made to organizations for the benefit of the communities that were impacted by the Bridgeton Landfill. So as Dawn and Karen were saying, by the terms of the agreement, we cannot make grants to individuals, which as a community foundation, by our charter, we cannot do anyway. We have to make grants to 501c3 non-profit organizations, and we cannot purchase property through this fund. So those are the big things that by the agreement we are not allowed to do. And so we are currently in the middle of a process to see how we can best impact the community, what those community needs are. In the terms of the settlement, it specifically lays out public health, public safety, and the environment as the big buckets that we're wanting to look at for the funds that will eventually be going out. And by eventually is not very long down the road, but we want to make sure we put a good process in place and really get some feedback from the community before we just start, throwing money out the door. We want it to be done right. So it's going to be a little bit, and Elizabeth's going to talk a little bit about what that process looks like for us right now, and up until hopefully we'll be starting to make some grants coming up in the relatively near future.
Okay, well, again, can you use this one?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is it on? Okay, wonderful. Well, again, hello, my name is Elizabeth George. I'm Director of Philanthropic Advising at the St. Louis Community Foundation. And what that means is my role is to help think about how we strategize our grant making, how we make sure that the work that we do is going to have impact in our community. And we're very, very committed to ensuring that this project fund, that this community project fund will have positive impact in this community. So as Dawn and Karen mentioned, the scope of the project, of the fund is for the communities impacted by the Bridgeton Landfill. So this is just the Bridgeton part, not the West Lake part. But for the Bridgeton Landfill, and that was defined as St. Louis County, St. Louis City, and St. Charles County with a priority area of a 4-mile radius. And to be very honest, we are really focused in on that 4-mile radius, and we may even say that bringing that in a little closer than the northwest corner of University City where I live. We want to lay out the process that we're using. The lawsuit says we have 4 years to expend all the funds. And we could have very easily, on July 1st, started writing checks. But we knew that if we want to have that positive impact, that we need to do this well, and we need to make sure that whatever we're doing will have that impact that we want to have in the community. So we're going through a sort of needs assessment almost process where we are currently talking to a whole lot of community stakeholders on all sides of this issue. And we started with Karen and Don and Matt right from the beginning saying we need to hear what's happening in your community. We've talked to Representative Matthijssen, we've talked to Harvey, we've talked to your elected officials, some of your local elected officials. We're trying to get to some of the federal constituency that's a little harder to reach in election season. We've spent some time with the county. We've spent some time, really, we've talked to other health funders to see what their thoughts are. And we're starting to gather quantitative data as well, looking at the studies that have been done. And not just health, but also population trends, who's living in the community now, and how we can think about what's best for this community. Again, it's environment, public health, public safety. That's what we're doing now. And at some point this fall, and some of this will be determined a little bit by when the record of decision comes down from the EPA, because these are two separate things, right? Meaning the EPA ROD and the Community Project Fund are two separate things. So we don't want to get in the way of giving you as a community time to react to the ROD. But we will be coming to the community and holding a series of community meetings at different times and different days of the weekend and the evenings so that we can get as much information. What our thought is that we're going to take to you what we're hearing as the greatest needs are, and get your reaction to that and what you think some of the ideas you might have around those needs that we are seeing. Then we'll look at what kinds of grants we're going to make. And we envision seeing two levels of grants. Some might be more programming or project-oriented that would be smaller grants and others might be larger capital projects and large grants. And $12.5 million sounds like a lot of money, but $12.5 million can go very quickly once you start talking about big projects, right? So we envision that we'll do two levels of requests for proposals where we go out and we say, okay, organizations, these are the things that have come up from the community as the greatest needs. And we want you to now give us a proposal regarding what you want to do, how you would address these issues, and how you would take on a project or a program that might help better the community in these ways. And we envision a couple of different levels that for smaller projects, that those will probably, those proposals, requests for proposals will go out the end of the year, the beginning of the new year. And we hope that maybe by the end of first quarter 2019, we can start funding in those areas. For those larger projects, they take more time to really think through how you're going to do it, what it's going to look like, and what that framing and time frame for actually implementing. And so those would, if we come up with 2 or 3 different larger projects, that'll be 2 or 3 different proposal processes. So that's where we are, that's what we're doing. We have really appreciated getting to know this community and learning from you all what impact on your lives has been. And as I said, our commitment is that whatever we do, that it will have positive impact on this community.
So you're not really going to the local government to find out what they feel the needs are in their community. You're going to the 501(c)(3)s or communities to find out what they need.
We're going to the local government, so we've spoken with the mayor, we've spoken to people from Mr. Stanger's office, we've spoken with the state rep, we've talked to a number of local government officials to hear from them what they see community needs to be. And we've spoken with, the West Lake CAD, Maria met with them, we've spoken with Just Moms, we're really trying to get a wide sense. It'll be 501(c)(3)s that will be implementing grants, not necessarily that they are telling us or what they think the needs are. We're talking to some 501(c)(3)s as well, because there are nonprofits that are providing services in your area, and we want to hear what they see and what they know. We've also spoken with the schools. Yes?
Have you spoken to everyone to say that because we're on the list?
Not yet, but we're,
Could you repeat that?
the question was if we had spoken with anyone from St. Anne government. So. Sure. So the question is, can we give an example of what kinds of programs or projects that we might be thinking of? The rumor has it that in the large cap area, that the hazmat unit would really like to have a pumper, and that would be something in terms of public safety would be able to make sure that if there were issues on that site, that the equipment would be here in the area that could deal with that kind of issue, rather than having to go outside the area and the time that it would take to bring equipment in. So that's in the large cap type project. Things like respiratory clinics, again, in the large cap. Smaller projects that we've heard about have ranged everything from educational programming, mental health services, community gardening, to gardening. So I'm just saying these are, where there's been a breadth of ideas. I'm not saying those are any of the things that we would be doing. We're just, those are some examples. So. Other questions?
Did I hear that you were saying the timeline, the small project's about a year? You said third quarter 19?
No, we're hoping that we have funds flowing by the end of first quarter 2019. So that's, and I know that seems like a long time, 9 months from the time of the settlement. The reality is, to do this well, as I said, we could start writing checks tomorrow, but we want to make sure that we've got that community need really well defined.
And an idea of the larger projects, roughly, timeline?
It really depends on what those end up being. I don't want to make any kind of commitment or decision on that.
Will there be some sort of level of transparency as to who is asking for these grants? Because I'm afraid that as the community, with it going out 4 miles, that it's going to turn into a money grab sort of. And for us, we've been here watching a lot of entities come and go when it benefited them. And I just want to make sure that we have a lot of input and can see who's asking for the grants.
Yes, we can. Thank you for that. That is actually not something that we had really talked about, whether we would publish the list of who had applied. But
I want to say that one of the things that we are committed to, because of everything that's happening in this community, is committed to transparency, and any suggestions we can get from you on how to make sure that we make that process transparent so that the information is out there for everyone. We welcome those sorts of suggestions.
And understanding that we may not be able to actually do everything suggested, but we will certainly be thinking about how we keep that open so that you all feel comfortable with this process.
So just refresh my memory, because there's been a lot of different scenarios that have been discussed, that this might be the way it goes, that might be the way it goes. If somebody applies for a grant through the St. Louis Community Foundation, is there a panel that reviews that? What's the mechanism for making a determination on awarding a grant or not?
And again, this is a fantastic question. The short answer is when push comes to shove, when the final decisions are made, it is the board of the St. Louis Community Foundation that makes the final decisions on any grants that we're going to make. However, they typically approve recommendations that come to them. Originally, the thought was that there would be a community group that would be making those. And by the way, our board is made up of members of the community at large. So we have people that are really thoughtful and understand that we need to be, we're a community foundation. We're about the betterment of the community. So anyway, originally the thought was, and the Attorney General came to us asking for a community advisory committee that would be overseeing the grant making. And then there was a list of people that was given, for the settlement to go through, a list of people that was given that would not be allowed to be on that community advisory committee. And at which point we said, no, we will not be held to that. And so then rather than have fights over who would be on a community advisory committee or who could be on a community advisory committee, that was taken out of the settlement language. We are considering how we can make sure that, again, in the interest of transparency, that there might be some level of people from the community that are part of the recommendation process and keeping in the spirit of the, not keeping in the spirit of the settlement, because there are unspoken restrictions in that settlement. So we're still trying to figure that out. We've had other grant making that we've done with a couple of community members on grant making or on a task force. They weren't quite as controversial as this, however, so that makes it a little easier.
We have a question.
Sure.
What role does Republic Services play in this decision-making process?
None.
They're not on this committee.
I will. Well, they contributed $12.5 million.
Well, are they a general contributor to your organization?
Not that I know of. Yeah.
We researched as much as we could.
Right. At least they haven't historically been. There was something that you asked Republic Services.
About Republic.
What their role is. There was something else I was going to say and I lost it. So if it comes back to me, I'll bring it back. Yeah.
Is it possible to get air monitors through this grant? Is that like one of the things that would be safety?
If the community and, I know what I was going to say before. It hasn't been ruled out. So, and what I was going to say is we are bound by, we are required to submit quarterly reports to the Attorney General's office and to Republic Services. So they don't, they're not part of any kind of grant making decision body. However, we do have to report quarterly on our activities.
Does that include those that apply and are turned down? Or is that just where it goes?
Again, it's similarly, we have not, identified how transparent, if we're going to be transparent with the community, we would have to include them. So.
Whatever that ends up looking like, it will look
Correct.
the same on the other end.
Correct.
Okay.
Question?
I just want to mention that something that you shared with me previously is that the type of projects that you are considering or maybe would give preference to would be projects that would either be able to sustain beyond the 4-year window in which the timeline is for the money to be spent, or the purpose of that would be within that 4-year window. So if you know a 501c3 that's in the area, just know that when you're talking to them about this, that to keep that in mind.
Right. So again, we're not, we don't want something that at year 4 1/4, they're saying, okay, we're out of money and this is going away.
I know you said there were some unspoken restrictions, and maybe you guys have done your research, but there is 501c3s, Coalition to Keep Us Safe, that claim that they're benefiting public health, and they're not. And so is there is that like a bottom line? Like you guys can't, you know what I mean? What will that look like in considering like front organizations or front 501c3s? How detailed will you get to making sure that money doesn't get funneled back to the polluter?
I don't think that the Coalition to Keep Us Safe is a 501c3.
There are 4, aren't there?
Oh, are they?
Do you want
Yeah, we're not allowed to give to C4s.
And then my second question was what,
Oh,
it's okay, like local fire, or municipal departments, what is that?
That's a great question because they're not 501c3s. However, we have worked with supporting foundations and we've found other ways to provide funds to municipal organizations where it makes sense. And for instance, Maria caught in the language, in the original language, which is not, I mean, that is, that's the press release, but in the language there was a statement that no organization that was funded through primarily, I'm not going to get it right, the state could receive funding. And one of the things we wanted to keep open was the ability for schools, for instance, to receive some funding. And so Maria caught and changed the language to funded and controlled by the state. So that means that municipal or county governments that might have some state funding and school districts that definitely have state funding could still be considered. Let's go back here in a minute. Can you shout?
So, my question is, what is your background and are your positions paid positions on this community fund project? And
Sure.
That's just what I want to know. Okay, thanks.
I'll introduce myself and then I'll let Maria give her background. So again, I'm Director of Philanthropic Advising at the St. Louis Community Foundation. So I am a paid employee of the St. Louis Community Foundation. And we, in the interest of transparency, we are receiving a small fee to administer this project. Or to administer this fund. My background is in philanthropy and in grant making. I worked for 10 years for a health conversion foundation, meaning making health grants. We worked specifically around children's health. And then for 4 years, I worked with a consulting group that works specifically with nonprofit organizations. And some of my clients were health-oriented and some of my clients were around working with foundations. So again, I've got the last 15 years of my longer than 15 years career has been specifically working in philanthropy, in grant making, and in health-oriented organizations.
So I am the Director of Community Engagement for the St. Louis Community Foundation, also a paid position. And I have to say that both Elizabeth and I, in addition to working on this project, we also have a number of other initiatives that we were working on for the Community Foundation as well. Be they working with our donors to help them with their philanthropy. In my case, I work with a lot of the nonprofit organizations that come to us for funding. Because my background is actually in fundraising. I've been a professional fundraiser for my entire, much longer than 15-year career, and have only recently switched to the heavenly side where I get to actually give away money, and so that's very much fun for me. But my expertise is really working with those nonprofit organizations, helping them professionalize the kinds of fundraising activities they're doing, helping connect them with some of the funds that we have at the Community Foundation that might support the kind of work that they do. And so that is, when we think about this particular project, that's probably going to be coming, in the second step of what we do as the nonprofit organizations start to think about how they can access these funds for the betterment of this community. Does that answer your question?
So I have a question, and we talked about this when we met, but just to clarify, there was an article that came out, and I don't remember what source it was, but talked about organization, you guys are awarding grants to organizations that are not necessarily just local, but completely out of state and on the East Coast. Could you guys address that? How this fund will be handled to that rumor that's out there?
So the St. Louis Community Foundation is an organization. We have $500 million in assets, and last year we gave about $80 million in grants out to our community and in fact worldwide. A number of those grants, a large portion of the grants that we gave out and do give out every year are through donor advised funds. So what that means is the donor has money with us, and then the donor says, Community Foundation, I want to recommend a grant to X organization. And we say, okay, it's a 501c3 organization, it's in good standing with the IRS. We will make that grant on your behalf to that organization. We don't tell our donors where to give their money. They give their money wherever they want. They may want to give to their alma mater in New York State. We'll give to their alma mater in New York State. So a number of our grants have in fact gone out of the community, but 80% of the grants that we give out stay in the community, in the St. Louis region. So we like to think that philanthropy is place-based, and we like to encourage our donors to make a difference in their own community. So that's sort of our philosophy about grant making. As relates to this fund in particular, because of the language of the settlement, which I think would be a no-brainer anyway, that 4-mile radius is where the funds are supposed to be concentrated, and that's where the funds will be concentrated for organizations living and working in that 4-mile radius.
And also, this fund is not a donor-advised fund. This is called a field of interest fund, which means that the only thing that this, the field of interest in this case is environment, public health and public safety in the affected communities, St. Louis County, St. Charles County, St. Louis City, with the priority area of the 4-mile radius.
Okay, my question is, well, if you're an ordinary citizen within the radius or without it, but you're not a 501c3, is there a way that you can help that person, direct them to somebody that can help them, be like the financial partner to them?
So we can help direct you to services. We cannot provide services to or funding for individuals. It is both written in the language of the settlement. The language of the settlement prohibits us to provide funding to individuals, to provide funding for remediation, and to provide funding for purchase of property. So those 3 things we cannot do.
So, and kind of following up on that question, what Dawn mentioned, like a bumper, who's the qualified organization within the 4-mile radius that can procure that and make that happen? Just somebody, I mean, just,
A fire truck.
yeah.
A fire truck. Again, we would look to, there are 2 foundations, what they call supporting foundations in the St. Louis region. One is the St. Louis Police Foundation, and there is a very small St. Louis Fire District Foundation. I'm not exactly sure of the name of it. Those are both 501c3s. So if the community determined that that was something that the community thinks should happen, we would look to organizations like that to help be the pass-through to get to the municipal organizations, the governmental organizations that that would be using those. Pardon?
Yeah, thank you. I forgot the term, but when we met, we also spoke about if there are.
When we met, we also asked that similar question that Debbie asked. If there are not-for-profits that are not 501c3s yet, who are applying for grants, who are doing good jobs in the community, I forgot the term you used, but there's a financial agent situation you can set up?
That you could set up.
Yeah,
you could work with a 501c3 and to have them, serve as your fiscal agent for a grant proposal for the fund. As long as it's truly a partnership with another 501c3 organization, and they're willing to vouch for you, as it were, because it's their nonprofit status that would be on the line for the grant. Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to point that out. If there are community groups that you're a member of that you feel have some services and some track record, they don't have to be 501c3. There are ways.
You just you would have to partner with the 501c3 though.
I wanted to point out 2 things. First of all, is there an impact statement that somebody's going to apply for it? Do they have to prove that they were harmed? Is there any kind of impact statement?
So the language of the settlement does not state that, it prohibits remediation. So, and the language of the settlement does not state that the organization has to be dealing specifically with harm caused by the Bridgeton Landfill subsurface smoldering reaction.
Fire.
It did.
Fire.
Known as the underground fire. The language is for the betterment of the community in terms of the environment, public health, and public safety. Well, actually, it's environment, safety, and health. However, so they don't have to have an impact statement that says how they were impacted by Bridgeton Landfill, or what they were doing was what they're resolving was something that was caused by the Bridgeton Landfill. And I actually think that that will serve your community well, because the data that is out there, in many cases, the data looks inconclusive. So therefore, keeping the language a little broader will allow, I think, a little more leeway. The other thing is, they will have to be able to tell us how what they are doing is for the betterment of the community. That part has to be clear.
Right. Okay, because obviously, some of us have been at this for a very long time, and it's a little bit hard to swallow when someone comes in and puts their hand out for something that we, the community, has actively been trying to get them to engage on, and now because there's money, they're here, and they don't have to prove how they were.
To make decisions in our best interest.
Right. So that's a little selfish on our part, I guess, just because that's really kind of hard for us to take, but I get what you're saying. And just so everybody in this room knows, Just Moms STL is not a 501(c)(3). We will not be applying for any of this money.
Can you start rumors? Can you become one?
No. This is not what I want to do for the rest of my life.
And quite honestly, you'd probably be more likely to be a C4 organization than a C3 as an advocacy. But anyway, that's tax law that we don't need to get into.
So it's just like the betterment of the community with a focus on this 4-mile radius, but like just the betterment of the community. So like millions of dollars or thousands of dollars could go to like anything that generally benefits, but not specifically like benefits solutions for those suffering from the Bridgeton Landfill?
So, well, yes and no.
Does
So
that make sense?
it's specifically for the betterment of the community in terms of the environment, safety, and health. Now, is it specifically for issues that were caused by the Bridgeton landfill? No, it is for the betterment of the community in terms of environment, health, and safety. Having said that, we are aware that this community has been harmed, and we are aware of some of the needs of this community. Will every penny go to only the people that were directly harmed by the Bridgeton landfill? I cannot guarantee that. Will every penny go to the communities that have been harmed? Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the goals are not specifically reparative, but they can be.
Correct. The goals are not specifically reparative, but they can be. Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And these are the terms of the settlement.
And again, we were not a party to this settlement. You know, basically, the settlement happened and they said, here, this is the parameters you're working with St. Louis Community Foundation. Go do it. So now we're trying to do it.
Anybody else? Questions?
I would just like to make a comment.
Comments?
I'm extremely happy that this organization is who is in control of this money. Number one, based on the fact that
When the Attorney General went out and, I can't say that he solicited for organizations similar to St. Louis Community Foundation, but one of the big things that I was most impressed with was the way that they were upfront and forthright, coming out to meet with us, talk about what's important to us. But the fee that they charged was also, I don't want to say it was middle of the road. You guys were the low ball. You were the low bid of what the administration fees were. So honestly, the money that's in this community, that was awarded to this community, is being spent on this community and not on administrative fees and things like that. So I just want to say thank you to you two ladies for being involved and wanting to take on this project to try to help rebuild this community. Thank you.
Thank you. It really is, you know, it's a time, trite saying, but it is truly an honor to be working with you.
And I would just like to say too, because you did say something a little bit earlier that I'm just going to repeat because I don't think anybody else caught. It's not easy to pick up this issue. This is a dirty issue. It is messy. It is political. It is kind of like stepping in a pile of dog poop and not being able to get it off your shoe. Sorry, I have dogs. But in all honesty, as Matt was talking about the Attorney General's office trying to find an organization that would be able to handle this, that was a big part of this issue. Just so you know, there are organizations in other states that look at this issue and go, nope, not going to touch it, not touching that. So we are very thankful it's you. We're thankful that it was much lower of a fee than we ever thought it was going to be, and I'm just grateful that you came out and answered questions. And you know, this is why Karen and I host these meetings. This is, you know, they're now part of our community. They have been, we just didn't know about you guys and all the other things that you did in St. Louis. But I mean, we want to welcome you to our community again, and it's an ongoing process. Yeah.
And you're gonna see more of this over the next 4 years.
I just wanted to make a comment that $12.5 million in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money. So, I mean, if you divided it by everybody that lived in that 4-mile radius, it would not be a lot of money. But I do want to say, so don't expect miracles. But I do want to say that after meeting with these two ladies and hearing what they had to say, and and being here tonight, I feel confident that the money will be used in a way that will be the most beneficial for the community, and that it will be, divided up, or, however it's determined that it's used. I think it will be the best value that we could get.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody? No more questions for Maria or Elizabeth?
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions in general? Comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just one, when I went to the site, the EPA site, and the comments, all my comments, none of them were there.
Okay, we should probably talk about that, don't?
Yeah.
Question.
Well, I emailed, and I never got a response.
What was the question?
He is looking for his public comment that he submitted to EPA on the proposed remedy, which a lot of people seem to be looking for their comment. Does this work?
Okay, so, does no good for them to apologize, but EPA did apologize for that. They majorly botched this. It was a simple spreadsheet that they messed up, guys, but they messed it up. They blame it on archaic software. They blame it on. When the responsiveness summary comes out, so it'll have all the public comments, and then it'll have their answers. You won't get a specific answer to yours, but your question and comment will be linked in and somehow addressed in the grand scheme of things. We're told that there are a lot of comments that did not make it there, but they will in that. So I don't know if they're going to plan on re-releasing all the individual comments and just having them lumped into sections. I don't know. That's what I would ask.
Just so you know, we asked them. We practically begged them on the phone before they released them not to release them because we were afraid that something like this would happen. And they said that they were doing this because they wanted to be transparent, but at the end of the day, they ended up not being transparent because a lot of the comments weren't even put out there. So.
No, and like my piece of paper I read from earlier, it doesn't inspire confidence when you have people telling you they don't know how to work a spreadsheet. My 5th grader can do it.
I suggest next time you talk to them or anyone over there that you ask them if the whole purpose of concealing the administrative record for 7 or 8 weeks is to do some wholesale selective didactic.
Oh.
Can you repeat that, Dawn, so everybody can hear that?
We're on the same wavelength a lot of times.
For what it's worth, the EPA did say that it's routine, not that I'm a Superfund expert, but in those meetings, the EPA said that it's common for the administrative record to come down as they prepare the release of a final decision. So
they did.
Just relaying what we were told in those meetings to you all.
I'm just gonna, and yes, that's true. That's what we were told too. You're correct. But I would just tell you, in my questioning, and I know Harvey, in our questioning initially of EPA when we first got involved in this site, if there had been any off-site exposure, we were told without a doubt no, and then that little puppy exists right there and has existed for some time. So I would just encourage everyone to question everything and hold on to what's good.
Again, this is a great example of why you cannot stop coming to these meetings, why it will have to be watchdog. Everything will have to be watchdog.
No doubt, because I know I was thinking, and it's good to hear Donna's on the same page, that I was preparing when they re-release it after the decision. I was trying to carve out wherever I can to find some time to go through some of those old documents to make sure nothing that stood out to me was missing.
Accidentally left out.
That's right, accidentally left out. And again, not that it will be, we're not saying that, but we know to always check, which is extra work on us. But
Like old topics that have never been addressed by the trucks.
Yeah.
They just have never happened. Just leave
Right.
any reference to the trucks or comments that people made about the buried trucks will just be left out.
Right, and if you read those comments, which I highly suggest the ones that you can find to read, there's a couple of really interesting ones there that people from the past are starting to come forward saying that they found some things. It's just worth keeping an eye on, because as they dig into a site that's never been dug into before, that used to be one big giant hole in the ground, and it used to be the Soje of this area where you brought all your bad stuff. I think Bob Alvarez said that it's a surprise when there's not a surprise. So it's got to be something that we have to just stay on top of. Alex?
Did anyone go to the Bridgeton council meeting last night, and did they renew their contract?
Donna, you want to talk?
No.
Or
This
Mel?
is the beginnings of discussion.
Oh, okay.
The contract does not even expire until the end of next year.
Okay.
December, it's a 3-year contract. They're just trying to get in, make an offer ahead of time, and the offer was for the first year, the rates would remain the same, and then the second and third years, 2021 and 22, it would be a 2% increase. And the gist of the conversation was that all the council members pretty much agreed that it was a pretty good deal, because 2% was less than any of the bids on the last go-around. And of course, they discussed, were residents happy, and apparently all the residents are happy with their trash service. So it's probably going to go right.
No one on the council brought up the concerns of...
Mr. Hine did.
Okay.
Randy, you can always count on Randy to bring
He
it
was
up.
concerned with the...
You guys probably can't hear that.
Yeah.
So she's asking,
Violations of the site.
Alex is asking about the continued service with Republic Services trash through the city of Bridgeton. Donna attended the meeting last night, and she mentioned that it looks promising that the council will go with Republic with their contract that they're offering as the lowest bid.
Which for their lowest bid is a lower bid than it was last time from them.
Or from anybody.
Or from anybody. So they've gone extra low, it would appear.
And it could be that they're trying to lock in, because there could be some disruption up there with their transfer station,
Yeah.
which could maybe cause delays in trucks or something, and people would get humped off, and they're just trying to get a lock on the situation.
Donna makes a
ahead of
good
time.
point. It could be that they're worried that there's going to be some disruption, or disruption,
That
not
would cause
destruction.
residents to complain about the service.
I'm tired. It's before it gets...
Randy?
So regarding the council meeting last night and the Republic discussion on the extension of their contract, they're proposing a no increase for 2020, 2% increase for 2021, and a 2% increase for 2022. And my point was, how do we know we're getting the lowest bid if we don't go out for bid? And I also made the point that Republic offers good trash service. However, their management and their administration procedures are less than par. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I think 2 other council members are concerned about their bid and the extension that they want. However, 5 other council members are probably in favor of the extension. And with our little discussion last night, we probably won't get any kind of negotiation on what they offered if we go back to them and say, well, what else can you do for us? So anyway, but my idea is to go out for bid, and I don't know if I'm only 1 vote out of 8, so thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
So there's that. Yes, Todd?
Talk about the article came out about the PGA.
Did you guys see the article?
Tell us about it, Todd.
Todd didn't read it.
Hey,
Hey, hon, what does this mean? What's in this article? It just caught his eye because it said golf.
I think that was the whole point of the article, is
Yeah.
that it had golf related. It was supposed to pull in people that were coming to St. Louis not to shed a bad light on St. Louis, but to kind of just say, hey, you know what? There's this thing that even St. Louis doesn't want to talk about going on, and you're not far from it. And oh, by the way, you're under an emergency plan, and, you know.
Yeah, people are really picking up on that kind of stuff.
And I think that, in my opinion, that speaks to, I think, what everybody in this room feels, which is, gee, I sure wish somebody would have told me, you know? I mean,
absolutely.
So, you know, if they don't think it's dangerous, it's up to them, but at least they know.
That's right.
And they get asked at press there too.
It could be the landfill flood.
You want to cause another fire? Catch it on fire and land it? Matt's cringing, I can just see it. He'd respond. The Goodyear blimp crashing into the landfill. Another Hindenburg.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I guess that's all we have for you. Be looking out to see what's going to happen in September.
We will be on that page. If you haven't, Kristen, can they see you to sign up for the newsletter?
Yes, if you are not signed up for the newsletter, the Just Moms STL newsletter, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you do that, because that is the quickest way that we can get the most information out to the most people.
So you can just go to STL Moms.
You can go to our website and sign up for it from there.
But, and Ed, you have a place they can sign up for updates too, right, on MCE?
Through MCE.
Okay.
You can go there and you can get updates quickly.
Because it'll be faster for us to email you guys with a decision looming, like as soon as, I don't even know how we're all gonna find out, but they'll probably email or call us, or do what they did last time, which is, hey, what's a number to get a hold of you immediately? And then, so it'd be quicker for us to have your contact info and send out a mass, get ready, we've got 24 hours, that sort of thing.
Okay, well,